episode 6 of What's in Box. I am absolutely charged for today's episode, but before I begin, let me just do some introductions. With me this week, as always, is my founder and CTO, Mark Taccolini. How are you today, Mark?
Good.
And depending on your viewing screen, right in the middle, we've got a very special guest, CEO of Intellic Integration and Solution Architect at 4.0 Solutions, Mr. Walker Reynolds. How are you, Walker?
Ahoy, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining. For those of you tuning in, earlier today, we had a webcast where we talked all things 9.1 with some of the new rollouts. So today we're going to be covering and drilling a little further into the MQTT portion and the new enhancements, as well as the unified namespace. So I don't want to keep talking because I think this is going to be a very insightful discussion. So Mark, take it away.
Well, thank you, Tolga. And let me know, Walker, should I give our users a preview of how to define tags and MQTT connection? And then I give the screen to you so you can talk about what to decide to improve together.
Yes, that would be great. Like, so basically the big announcement in 9.1, it's going to be 12, right? Or is it 11?
Yeah, 12.
11 and 12, right? So 9.1.12 is basically I had a chance to see it Monday in detail. Mark came to the office and we got a chance to do a deep dive. And, the remote tag provider support, which allows you to basically, pull the broker namespace in as you're able to browse it and treat a topic inside of a broker as a tag that you would in Factory Studio. I got a chance to see all that stuff. And so I think, and most of what we talk about today is going to be centered around the MQTT support, tags inside the asset model, the hierarchy, and then we're going to talk about Factory Studio as a node in a unified namespace ecosystem, either the unified namespace itself or an exterior node. So I think it would be helpful if you wanted to demo real quick what we're going to be talking about. Yes.
So let me start with that. So I'm going to share my screen, and you should have that now. And so essentially, let me start from the basics here. So that's where you have your Factory Studio solutions. And I'll try not to go too deep, but give some quick overview if you have users that aren't familiar with us, okay? In our product, we have the concept of objects. So a tag, an alarm, everything is a .NET objects. I will not go on the details on benefits on that, but they are huge. In fact, we haven't talked about that.
Yes, they are. It's a big
so
deal.
Essentially, those are our objects. And our objects, they can be placed inside a tree view or a hierarchy. So if I want to have this tag I just created to be part of this asset modeling, I can add that object here, or I can add that object through here as well. I can modify where that specific object sits in our hierarchy. There are lots of enhancements I'm going to do on that, but that I will wait to talk with Walker because some of those ideas came from our meetings. So let's start on what we have now. So in our object model, whatever you have the plain objects or the view of the objects in a tree, they do not have any built-in mapping with the I/O. We do that in what you call devices, where you have more than 60 protocols, and you can define your protocol, your nodes, and then you can map a tag name to an address on the remote controller. What we added now to MQTT and also to some stories that you don't need to do that mapping anymore. Once you have that basic definition mapped, where is your provider, you can browse that information right away. So I'm switching to this other VM, and
while you do that, let me put some context in that. So for those of you who are watching, you guys hear us talking about, basically we talk about 3 platforms as our IIoT platform. We talk about Ignition, we talk about WinCCOA, we talk about Factory Studio. I know that we're on a Tatsoft thing. We shouldn't talk about the competitors. This is all on me. I'm only speaking for myself. But we build infrastructure and we build ecosystems. So the prevailing thought in industrial automation is that you're going to settle on a manufacturer, right? An OEM. We're going to be a Rockwell house, or we're going to be a Wonderware house, or we're going to be an Ignition house, right? We don't do that. Solutions architects don't do that. Solutions architects create infrastructure out of many solutions. And that's why using a technology-driven approach gives you the ability to select the right solution for the problem you're trying to solve and then plug it into the infrastructure, into the ecosystem. We use Factory Studio, WinCCOA, Ignition, Factory Talk, many solutions alongside one another, right? One of the things that we do with Factory Studio that's most important to note is that Factory Studio is great on the edge. We use it all the time as a replacement for HMIs. That was, in fact, Mark, I think that's how you guys originally went to market, right? That was we're going to be a software HMI, right? But Factory Studio is way more than that. Just like when I say with, Ignition, for example, I always say it's a platform for solving problems. It's the same thing with Factory Studio. It's a platform. You can build an ERP system in Factory Studio if you want to. I mean, you have that capability. And one could argue you could build one within Factory Studio faster than you could build it in, say, Visual Studio, for example, because of the pre-canned solutions that are already available. Here, but for what people are going to be seeing here is something really quite amazing, okay? And I'm going to compare it to Ignition. In Ignition, you have the gateway area network. You can create remote tag providers inside of Ignition using multiple Ignition gateways. So I can have an Ignition gateway up in the cloud, and I could have 2 on the edge. And I can connect Ignition to Ignition, and in my cloud infrastructure, I can browse the tags in my remote Ignition instance. That functionality is limited to 2 things: either an Ignition remote tag provider or an OPC UA server. Those are the only 2 ways that you can do that inside of Ignition. What you've done in Tatsoft, what you've done with Factory Studio, is you have created the ability to make a remote tag provider out of basically any connection. And any connection, and the 2 big ones are going to be, I can make my ControlLogix PLC a remote tag provider for my solution, right? So I can browse all my tags in my ControlLogix PLC natively in Factory Studio as actual tags, and the MQTT broker. The big one also that you showed me Monday was Canary. So now I can put Factory Studio in the center. I can have a Canary historian. I can have an MQTT broker, and I can be connected to a ControlLogix PLC, and I can treat all of the tags that live inside those 3 nodes as if they are tags that are running inside of Factory Studio. And that is as a remote tag provider. And that is a fundamental difference with any other platform out there. It was a big thing that stood out to me on Monday. So I wanted to put that into context. When Mark shows you today, when he shows you right now, this remote tag provider, it's pretty amazing. I mean, it's not pretty amazing. It's a lot of amazing. It's something that differentiates Factory Studio from any other solution out there right now. You're not going to be able to do this with any other platform right now, what he's going to show you.
Perfect. So let me start sharing again my screen because I believe I had stopped that. Okay. Good. So sharing. Okay. So what we're looking now is the project configuration. So when that application is running, let's start from there. So I have Luis help me here. So go to the runtime screen, showing that screen running. Okay. So when that application is running, we have that tree on the left side that's being created dynamically from the data provider directly. So you can open and play.
Is that a Spark B connection, or is that
Yes.
flat MQTT? That's Spark B?
That's Spark B. So you can open and navigate on that tree, Otávio, please.
Okay, so I don't have any other client yet connected to my broker. I've just launched this.
Yeah, right now our broker has nothing defined. So what we're doing now, we're starting just a simulation application to populate something on that broker. So what essentially to show that we are browsing dynamically. Excellent. So we didn't have anything on that broker. Now, after we run the simulation, we create some elements on that tree, okay? And this tree, we are showing the application running. So you can do generic displays to pick up data from a tree model. But when you are connected with the broker, it's not only when the application is running. We can do that right now, as Walker was explaining, the configuration tools as well. So go to the configuration tools now.
Okay.
And
so for the people who are watching, what's happening on this screen is the MQTT namespace that he just browsed on the Spark B devices. That topic does not live inside of Factory Studio right now. What he's doing is he's selecting the topic, and the visualization is reacting to the topic in the broker that he's selecting. And that's what you're seeing here with the trend, is that he's dynamically, if we add a new topic into the broker, he'll be able to browse it here, select it, and trend it on the screen. This is fully self-aware. So once I start publishing into the broker, Factory Studio will be able to react to it. And this is client side, by the way, we're looking at. Sorry, go ahead.
Exactly.
I just want to translate for the developers, our folks.
And let me show you the only configuration required to do that. On device channels, we added the support for MQTT. And what Walter was pointing out, we are using MQTT as example now, but we have that same ability with Canary Labs, and we adding OPCUA, Rockwell, Factory Studio, Pi. We can have many systems acting as tech providers with auto-discovery. And then in nodes, we are mapping to the specific IP port on the details on that broker, okay? When you do that, you win right away that ability to browser. You don't need to do any configuration more. And you can also, for instance, go to scripting or draw. Let's go to draw. It's a better example. And in this display, just put any symbol to create a bar graph animation. Can be text.io also, doesn't matter really. Anything you want to. If you are familiar with Factory Studio, you can pick up any objects and double-click to add dynamic properties. And if you go to the browsing, to the objects, you'll see that we automatically had added the MQTT also in our object model. So I can double-click in that tree and starting going after to one specific property I want, okay? Pick up any one. And I'm not creating any local Factory Studio tag to do that. We are just using.
This is the crazy part.
Yes.
This is the part that's crazy. Is in all the other platforms we use, we have to those tags have to be generated, and that's not what's happening here. What's happening is Factory Studio is allowing you to browse the actual namespace in the broker and interact with the value changes in the runtime.
Exactly.
Yep.
So when I select that object, you can press OK now. Pretty much you see my points here in my window is mapping to that remote assets. And before you close that, the syntax is in that case MQTT, that's the reference to my data provider, and then the address of that asset inside that. Two things that we have that are great. One, that you have right now is that this is a string. So I can put a math expression here. So if I can go there and do some editing to replace the first part of the address, the sparkplug1, by a tag in the application, instead of have a string, I can have a math expression like put a tag here, server.computername, whatever. I can have math expressions here or using other Factory Studio tags. So I can do displays and I can do scripting that will very easily be templates pointing to different parts of the asset modeling as we play with those properties. Because this mapping to that external resource can be a dynamic expression, just does not need to be a string. Is that clear, Walker?
Correct. Right. So for the non-super technical, what this basically means is that you could create a project, and that project can run on many nodes. Okay, so it could run on many machines, and you could use a reference to the local machine to get you to the correct broker that you want to pull the data from. That's number one. Number two, you could also use the runtime to reference the machine that you're running the actual runtime on, in the event you wanted to retrieve data from that local machine. That's what he's showing here, is that not only can it be static mapping, but it can also be dynamic using string concatenation.
Exactly. And let's keep exploring that. Go back to the runtime screen. So we are running this little application. And to see the tree again. The tree you are looking on the left side, we are just showing it's a built-in object that we have in a product called Remote Assets that show the tree of the broker as it is. But there are many applications we don't want to do that. We want to create our own unified namespace, exposing pieces and parts of that broker, or in some cases, combining trees, leaves on the tree from different brokers. So what we can do now in our asset modeling, if you go to the product configuration.
So one of the things I want to point out why you do this, so for the non-Factory Studio developers, or those of you who are new or you just started Frameworks University, I want to say two things. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Please, go ahead.
So number one, every tag inside of Factory Studio is an object. Okay, it is an instance of a tag class, and it is an object. There's huge advantages to that. Okay, not the least of which is that you can write some pretty powerful dynamic code that allows you to browse using IntelliSense the tag objects. All right, so there's a huge advantage to that. In most applications, the tags that you work with are abstractions. That is, they're not the actual object that is being referenced inside of the database running behind the software. Okay, so if you go to the ORM that is running in the background, when you create a tag, it creates a record inside of a database. There's an integer that's the ID of that tag. There's the name of that tag. There's all the other attributes in the table. In most platforms, when you are working with a tag, you are not working with that raw object. What you are working with is an abstraction that points to that raw object. And most of the time, that's in some type of tag hierarchy. Factory Studio allows you to work with the individual object itself, the tag object itself, manipulate it, dynamically include it in your code, browse it through IntelliSense, and at the same time, allows you to create the abstraction. That's what this asset tab is. It allows you to create an abstraction that is basically a hierarchy of your tags. And this is, if you're used to working in Ignition, you're always working in the abstraction layer inside of, there you go. This would be way better in a .NET style, Zach Wooten. What's most important to note here is that there are tags which are pure objects, and then there is an asset model where you can organize your tags if you want to. And a lot of that is expanding. What Mark told me on Monday is, that's going to become even more powerful in Factory Studio,
Exactly.
the asset hierarchy.
In fact, if you pick up, for instance, this example he's typing, if you pick up the property value of that tag, you see we have IntelliSense. And if you put one more dot after the value, well, in that case, just an integer value. But even so, we are showing now the props of the .NET itself, just to show for the non-technicals that it's really an object. So from our models, from our objects, you can keep going on their properties, use the IntelliSense, and even go back to the basic methods and classes from the .NET framework itself. Because as Walk was explaining, what I'm putting here on the script is the real objects. It's not a method, it's not a reference, so we can use all the power of the .NET framework and all the classes and all the object model in advanced programming at full scale.
And what are the implications? Here's the implication for a developer. When you are working with the abstraction, okay, and normally you guys will notice when we do our content, we generally don't get very, very technical because we want to talk to a very broad audience. So we try not to get very technical and not talk over anyone's head. Here, we're going to get into the technical details, why this matters, okay? So, because it's appropriate for the audience that's watching. When you are working with the abstraction, that is a string path to a tag, for example. If I say I want to read the value of a tag at this string path, in order for me to do that, I have to know what the path is, because I'm not dealing with an object. I'm not dealing with something that I can browse dynamically, okay? I have to know what the actual path is. So when you're dealing with an abstraction, something like a hierarchy, you have to know what the path of that hierarchy is in order to say, get me something at this value. Go get the value at this path. When you're able to browse the actual object, I don't have to know what tags exist at all. All I have to do is know what namespace I have to go to browse them. So in this case, I can say, go to the tag namespace, and then in the hierarchy directly below that, I want to go to a tag at such and such level. So in this case, he's pointing to the server monitor info namespace underneath the tag namespace. And now there's a tag in there called CPU usage. I could create a dynamic script that doesn't know that that exists, but I know that the tag I want is CPU usage. I don't know what namespace it lives in. I could create a dynamic script that would be able to find all of the CPU usage tags everywhere in the namespace dynamically in a single line of code, in one line of code, as opposed to having to write iterative code with 30, 40 lines inside of Python that's got to do recursive browsing, which is highly resource intensive, right? So anyway, the reason this matters is that when you're dealing with objects, your code can be stateful. It can be self-aware. If you add new objects, you can discover them automatically. When you're dealing with abstractions, you have to know what the abstraction is in order to be able to make it dynamic. And go ahead.
Great point.
No, just saying, great points. and thanks for making it more simple to explain, because I always talk object classes here. But
and the only people who understand it is a software developer, right?
Yes.
Is when, what's the big difference between an object? Yeah. Why do I care about working with objects? Well, because if you add new objects, you could discover them automatically.
Yeah, and not only tag objects. If I go to alarms and I create a new alarm group, if I start my hierarchy now from alarm dots, I see right away if I go to groups, I will see right away all my alarm groups I have. So this concept we extend not only for tags, but also to any type of application objects. But going back to the asset modeling, that's the key point.
And that includes the connection to the MQTT broker.
Could you the connections? If you go to namespace device, then .channel, I show all channels I have in my application. in that case, only one. And if I do one more dots, I have lots of built-in properties of the health of that connection.
Beautiful.
Good. So let's going back to tags now. So what are explaining that it's very useful to be able to customize the tree. So when the application is running, we may want to expose to the users the full asset model from the broker or from the Canary Lab asset model, whatever. So if you go to the runtime screen where the application is running, there are many applications to just expose the external asset model is enough. But there are many applications that I want to combine two different tag providers or to expose only pieces and parts of the data model to the operators. To do that, we are enhancing our asset modeling. If you go to the asset configuration now, essentially here you can create your trees. So you can create one new level, let's call that level 3. So you right click there, you ask to create a new level. And the key points here now that you can insert on that hierarchy, either objects from Factory Studio itself or objects from that dynamic tag provider. So if I go to MQTT and I go to any nodes under MQTT, like that one is perfect, like emulate devices, anyone, doesn't matter really. What I'm doing now, I'm exposing under, you can confirm, I'm exposing under level 3, all the trees, when I run this application, all the trees from that down will be dynamically showing based on that device. I'm handling the control of my asset tree from that point downwards to the remote tag provider. So when I go to runtime, I see now I have the level 3 I just created.
And so what he's saying here is that by dropping in the upper level, so he could have gone through and mapped amps and RPMs directly into level 3. He could have done that. And he would have had to add 2 tags, amps and RPMs. Or what he can do is he can move to the upper level and just map the upper level, and it will automatically pull in any of the leaf nodes, the children in the topic namespace below the level he mapped in.
Exactly. And that can go as far as the remote tree go. If I open, for instance, what I put on the level 1, I believe on level 1, I put something with more children. Yes. The tree just go from the point I selected down. In this case, on level 2, you see they have more children out there. So that allows you to really put a concept Walker has been talking for the last 2 years. That's the unified namespace. Not necessarily all nodes in our network will be 100% compliance with the unified namespace when you expose to your users. Mm-hmm. Ideally, they will, but not all projects are greenfields. So this tool allows you to expose to the user the unified namespace as it should be. Even you have to pick up pieces and parts, cuts from remote tags and from remote asset modeling, sitting in other servers.
In every one of our digital transformation initiatives, we do what's known as a bi-modal design, right? So bi-modal design is when we build an architecture to help an organization digitally transform. Number one, we have to have a mechanism. If what we're going to do is create a unified namespace, single source of truth for all data and information, it's the structure and the events of the business. If you want to do that, you have to have a plan to do 2 things. Number one, you got to have a plan to integrate the stuff they already have that doesn't support the technology that you have selected. So let's say I want to use MQTT Sparkplug B as the transport and the standard for moving our data around, right, in an MQTT broker. Well, if I have legacy devices in my organization and those devices don't support MQTT Sparkplug B, I've got to do one of 2 things. I've either got to not bring their data in, or I have to take I have to figure out how they do communicate, run them through a gateway, and then get them into our broker. This is what we use things like HiByte Intelligence Hub and all the IoT platforms for. So we use Ignition, Factory Studio, WinCCOA to do these things, right? What you guys are doing at Tatsoft right now is setting yourself apart from everyone else. Like you're really driving us towards, wow, well, this is going to make the lift so much easier when we go to connect to the brownfield stuff, right? I've got a legacy ControlLogix PLC, and I want to go ahead and convert that namespace into a unified namespace built on MQTT Sparkplug B. Well, now I can use Factory Studio easily to do that, right? I can do that easily, mostly because the thing that makes it different is I don't have to run those ControlLogix tags through Factory Studio tags anymore. I can literally take the native tag itself in the PLC and map it to a space in the asset hierarchy without having to run it through a tag. I don't have to make it a Factory Studio tag anymore.
Exactly.
There's nothing like that in the market. This is fundamentally what's different about the implementation that you guys did, is that doesn't exist. What we've been doing is, at IoT platform, talking to a piece of software. Once we're talking, then what we do is we move the namespace to tags inside the IoT platform, and then we get it into the broker. We don't have to do that now. Now what we can do is take the software, talk directly to the native namespace, and just map it in the asset hierarchy, and you take care of the rest. We don't have to do any tags.
Exactly.
And that makes a huge difference when it comes to scalability. It makes a huge difference, a significant difference, because every tag you create in a system consumes resources.
Yes.
And if you can skip over that level, now what you do is you increase the total number of tags. That's what I'd be writing that down too, Tolgar, right? If I'm going to talk to people, and Dave Hellier needs to be saying this too, is you get to bypass the tag creation component.
Yes.
Right? You get to bypass that piece, and that is just fucking genius, man.
And the maintenance also, because those models, they change time for time. So every time you have a binding or a mapping, as we ourselves used to have, you need to go to that. And now we have both. By the way, we still have the mapping. No worries there.
Well, that was what I was saying Monday, is if I want to map it, I can.
Oh, yeah, of course.
You know what I mean?
You can do everything that we're used to on the past.
I can map it if I want to, but now I don't need to. I don't need to.
And our tags, they can also be exposed as OPC server, or can be very easily published to a broker if you want to expose the tags you created inside our own platform. So, because there are some application logic variables that we still are going to create those inside. And when enhancements that I'm not showing yet because we work on that now, that came from my discussion with Walker, we are making our asset modeling tool to allow to create tags right there. Why not? There is no reason why I cannot, under machine 1, create the tag motor and go on machine 2, create the same motor tag, or just copy and paste the entire tree.
Which is something you would notice right now if you go into the asset tree. You can't create a tag there right now. Right now, you can't go create a level, right-click, and create a new tag, which everybody wants to do. And we were talking about this on Monday. Right now, what you need to do is if you want to map a Factory Studio tag into the hierarchy, you create the tag, and then you map it, right?
Exactly.
What they're going to be adding is the ability, once I've got my hierarchy in, I'll be able to add the tag right there, right within the asset hierarchy.
Exactly. And also copy and paste full branches of the hierarchy, and we create the object with the alarm information, all the information right away, without having to first work your data model. Because to be clear, what we have in our product, we have what we call templates, that some of the products they call user data types or custom data types. We have the object model where you can have arrays up to 3 dimensions, and you have the .NET objects you are creating that can be sitting in the hierarchy. And finally, you have your final asset view, where, by the way, you can have some objects hidden from that asset model exposed. And the utilization that we're going to now, we are allowed to create those tags and those objects right from the tree. And that will definitely make much more efficient many applications to define your model.
Could you go back to the runtime real quick? I want to just
Sure.
point something out. All right, so here's the, like, if you really want to, like, get trippy, okay? We talk about this all the time. We create, one of the things that we do at Intellic and at 4.0 Solutions. Yes, correct, exactly, Hezron. It saves a lot of processing time. We create what's known as self-aware applications. Okay, so if you want, when we build a SCADA system, one of the reasons we use MQTT, there's a lot of people who talk about this. Matt Paris is one of the guys. Mario Ishikawa is one of the guys. Dave Schultz is one of the guys that talks about this. Creating a self-aware system. Okay, and what is a self-aware system? Imagine that you could build a HMI interface that reacts to the sensors that actually exist. I could create one interface. So I could create a single interface where what I see on the screen is a function of the sensors that are on the production line. Okay, so I could take one screen, I could install it on 4 different production lines, and I've got basically 4 types of sensors. I got level, I have temperature, I have flow, and I have pH. Okay? I could create one visualization that reacts to whether or not those sensors exist. So on line 1, I've got all 4 sensors. Therefore, my visualization contains all 4 sensors on the screen. The screen itself reacts to what's in the namespace. On the second line, exact same screen, only sees 3 of the sensors: level, temperature, and flow. So pH does not show up on the screen. Okay? We do this all of the time. A very common application would be in plating operations. So if you guys have ever done like gold plating or nickel plating, you know, they're multi-cell implementations where I may have 2 rectifiers on this cell and I may have a pH sensor on this cell, but I could go to the very next line and I only have 1 rectifier and I don't have a pH sensor. Well, in the old days, the old server-client relationship and the standard HMI SCADA development world, you would have to build 2 different visualizations. One for the line that's got 2 rectifiers and the pH sensor, and one for the line that's got 1 rectifier and no pH sensor. They would literally be 2 separate visualizations. Maybe I use the same application, but I use a pointer that points to the visualization that has, 1 rectifier, no pH sensor. Well, we create self-aware systems. And if you're really like visionary, this is the first thing you see when you start playing with MQTT or you start playing with like object edge-driven namespaces. You're like, well, holy crap, I can build an application that reacts to what exists. I can build a visualization that reacts to only what exists. So I could build one application for every plating line in the world. And as long as I use the right technology, my visualization would react to what actually exists. And if I add a pH sensor, I don't have to use there's no engineering that I have to go through to add the pH sensor on the screen. All I've got to do is connect it to the namespace. And once it's there, the visualization reacts. That's what you guys are doing on that screen right there.
Exactly.
What you are doing there is the screen is reacting to what exists.
Exactly. And we are moving on that direction on the visualization. And in part, thanks to you, Walker, we realized that before to putting too much on the visualization that we're doing, like having templates that you automatically mapping of tags of certain data types, we did this little step back to enhance the foundation because we realized to really fully leverage that, we need to have that more flexible asset modeling and being able to more easily integrate those external tech providers. So what are now in our roadmap, and I'm saying in part thanks to you, is we are doing these big enhancements on the asset modeling to allow that easy creation of the unified namespace, mixing many data sources without replication. Then we can do the finals in not only trend charts, but any kind of displays, be very easy to react based on the asset modeling you're looking right now.
This screen, that trend you have in the lower right-hand corner, when you built this screen, whoever built it had no idea that Sparkplug B devices /C Edge Node 1 / emulated device / amps existed.
Of course. In fact, you saw when we start the application, he had to create those MQTT elements through that simulation application. Because when we start to running that, you can play back the video. We had nothing on the tree. Correct.
And so and this is the thing that we're constantly trying to teach people. We're constantly saying, I do this in meetings all the time. I'll say, hey, who here has heard of SCADA, right? Who here has heard of MES? And then everybody raises their hand. I say, great, forget everything you've ever known about SCADA and MES, because there's been a paradigm shift by going with technology-driven solutions, right? Going with technology-driven solutions, building a tech stack with a unified namespace, you can create applications that react to the environment. And it's so hard for people to wrap their brain around that. But there are people on this call right now, Anthony Lincoln for sure, who I'm very familiar with Tony. Everybody is seeing the reality here. And where Factory Studio is taking us is a big, one huge step forward, right? And that step forward is we don't have to first abstract tags in our connectors into tags inside of Factory Studio to be able to create a stateful system. That is a self-aware system. All we've got to do is connect Factory Studio to the external namespace, the external remote tag provider, and now our self-aware application inside of Factory Studio can react to those objects. So I'm going to take it one more step further, which is, everybody's should be familiar with Sesame, right? So the Smart Manufacturing Institute, they're a not-for-profit that's like trying to push smart manufacturing in the United States. They're Roy Kroc is his name, or
Roy Kroc.
Roy Kroc, right? He's the guy in the community that we work with. Sesame, one of the big things that Sesame is working towards is they want the community, they want integrators, they want developers and engineers to create profiles, right? And profiles that you will upload to the Sesame Cloud infrastructure that you could use over and over and over again. Here's what a profile is. A profile is an object. It could be a profile for a tank, a profile for a motor. Well, the form it's going to take is JSON. So that is, the profile will be built in a JavaScript object notation, right? In a JSON, a dictionary. You can publish that profile to a unified namespace as a topic. You could consume that profile, and you could build a dynamic visualization that is a function of the profile you're reading from a namespace that didn't even exist when you built the screen. I mean, the possibilities are totally endless. I mean, it's absurd where we're going, the direction that we're going. This is where we should have been going 10 years ago. This is the reason when you hear me talk about Factory Studio. Actually, can I share my screen, guys?
Yes,
absolutely.
Yeah, let me share my screen. Is easiest.
Don't have a share button in the bottom.
This is why we call frameworks limitless now. So officially, it's official.
I'm assuming this is screen 1. Nope. Let me do screen 2. Yeah, there we go. Let me do that. Can't capture my screen. You can't see it?
No, you need to press share, I believe, on the bottom there, and then I'll introduce it into the screen here.
Oh, got it. Okay. Yep. Let me do screen 2. Yep. I will click allow, and then it says the browser can't access the screen.
You may have some security restriction.
Yeah, on my Mac. You guys can keep talking, and I'll fix it.
Okay.
I probably don't allow Firefox to
and
do screen recording.
yeah, I believe if I'm not mistaken on that you were talking about some follow-up you gave to us after the training. And in case you cannot fix that,
yeah, can you share
one? I don't know if they exactly may you're planning to show.
I was actually gonna show the bulleted list. So
yeah,
to some background for everybody.
That email perhaps.
Correct. It's just like in that bulleted list. So
yeah, that email is, let's see, the date is 2018, October 2018, 18 months. Oh, more than 18 months. Wow,
correct.
2 years.
Yeah, we went. So I was in Chicago a few years ago. You guys can watch the video that our factory studio story, how I got introduced, and then we went and did training right away. At the end of that training, Mark is actually the one who did the training, and there was probably, I'm going to say, I don't know, 12, 15 people doing that training that week. And that was an awesome session because we were like brainstorming tons and tons of use cases for Factory Studio in our implementations. And at the end of that week, Mark sat down with us like in front of the whole group, and I basically just gave him this list. Like, this is an amazing platform. I was able to convert our MES system overnight. Literally, me and one other developer were able to literally convert our MES 4.0 solution to Factory Studio visualizations in like a 6-hour window overnight when I first got introduced to the platform. I had no training. I literally met you guys at the SCADA Summit. We gave him a list. We said, hey, there's basically 10, 15 things that we'd like to see you do that we really think would make it a huge game changer. And you guys delivered everything and then some. There's like 20 additional items that you guys have delivered since that date. And here's my point. My point is that most OEMs are not like that. Like if I go to, I go to Automation Fair every year. I talk to the product developers at Rockwell. I talk to the folks at Siemens. We have lots of people come visit us in our office. And when we say, hey, we need you to go open, we want these features. Normally, the reaction we get is the reaction that Aviva gave CirrusLink when they first gave them a bite at the apple for MQTT, 7-8 years ago. Who are you, right? We know what we're doing. We're the 800-pound gorilla. We're going to do whatever we want to do. You guys delivered on everything. And now today, we can build applications. Us as an integrator, taking our approach, our strategies, and using your tools and building our technology stack, no one can compete against us. We literally never lose in a head-to-head battle against another integrator because we can do everything in a third of the time for a quarter of the cost because of the technology. And you guys make that possible by joining this community. I mean, it's, when people ask me, why am I so high on Tatsoft? It's like, because they're one of the most responsive organizations I've ever worked with in my entire career. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And in fact, it's good to go to the back path because for instance, here I saw support for Spark Plug-in, but I saw also Factory Studio as a MQTT broker. And I forgot to mention, yes, we did that also, by the way.
Can you show that where you just check the button?
Yeah. When you are doing your project configuration, you can use any broker you want to, of course. But we have that built-in broker also. So when you are testing your application or running on the edge, you don't need to install or do any configuration of any third-party broker, because in addition to be a publisher and a subscriber, we have that built-in broker also that you can run. And one interesting thing about our built-in broker that we may extend to other brokers, right now it's only ours, we can very easily, with one line of configuration, expose our native tags as a MQTT element to the broker without doing zero programming or zero additional configuration. This right now is only to our own broker, but we are planning to allow similar configuration if just to expose our model through the broker to have that single one-line configuration as well. But to our built-in broker, that's there. So I'm not saying that we should use necessarily our broker for production, because there are great broker tools with lots of management features. So we're not trying to compete at all in that arena, to be clear. But to many applications, embedded applications, OEMs, Edge, it's quite handy to have a built-in broker, not only the publishing and client in the system.
It's for the development phase, right? It's when we do proof of concept, this happens all the time. We do proof of concept or pilot. Oftentimes we're using, we're using a built-in broker, like a lightweight broker that's not, industrially hardened. We'll do the proof of concept with a real lightweight broker. In this case, we'll use the broker that's in Factory Studio for up to a certain number of topics, right?
Yeah.
And when you're ready to scale, all you do is add in a robust broker in your architecture, and you don't have to change anything. The connection is the only thing that changes. You point to this broker now, not the one that's internal. That is the core of a technology stack. When you create a technology stack, the name of the software doesn't matter. The name of the technology does.
And in fact, in this example, this application is binding to a broker running in my local computer in this port. If it's our built-in broker as it's now, or another one, who cares, essentially? Right. The application is just mapping to a local broker that happens to be our built-in embedded in the products.
So where we stand right now, just so I'm clear, you guys sent, I have the link to .11. So 9.1.11.
Where you stand right now? Right now, what's public for the users and the integrators, in our asset modeling, we still are not allowing only one external tag provider. So this version that is already released, in the asset model, you can decide, in addition to Factory Studio elements, you can decide to have here either MQTT or Canary. But in this one, it's only one external tech providers, and we are in final phase of testing to be released soon as part of 9.11. If not, we require a major upgrades. It will be just a smaller updates. We will expand the model to allow the many data sources concurrently. That's where we are working now.
So you'll be able to do more than one remote tag provider.
Oh yes, definitely.
We'll also be able to use the same tag multiple places in the asset hierarchy. Right now, you can only put a tag in one place in the hierarchy.
Exactly. Those two constraints, we are already in final development testing phase. So I not give the date exactly, but it will be very soon.
And then the last one is you're going to also add in support for using the same tag name in more than once, right?
Under level 1 and under level 2, both levels will be able to have the same tag underneath. Excellent. With the same name, like motor. And this class of tag providers will do as much as we can. So we are doing that for Canary, we are doing for Rockwell PLCs, we'll do for OZSoft Pi, we do for OPC Way, we'll do for GE Store. Any connection that we have that's able to give me the ability to browse tags, we will enable the same concepts. Good. Okay. So many of our 60 protocols that we have now, they also will become, in addition to a protocol, they likely will become a potential tag provider as well, if the remote system allows that.
Excellent. Awesome. There was one other thing I want to touch on. Oh, so for those of you who are going through Frameworks University, you guys will notice that we have Module 1's completed. We have a lot of people who completed Module 1. We haven't released Module 2 yet. The reason we haven't reached Module 2 yet was we were waiting for this update. What happened was Tatsoft said, hey, wait until this next minor release, this release comes out before you do film the session. So that's, if you want to know why Module 2 hadn't been released yet, we've been working with these guys to get this piece released so that we didn't have to reshoot the training.
And now it's perfect because we're doing those enhancements on tag names. but pretty much everyone you can do right now with Canary Labs or right now with MQTT, the same learn, the same concepts you apply in a project with more data sources. And by the way, I see many projects that will be connected with one story and one broker also, by the way.
Yeah. So do you, real quick, you said something interesting when you were here on Monday that I actually didn't even think about. So one of the things that I did using Factory Studio is, for those of you guys that work with Canary Labs has MQTT support in it. And right now, in order to set up that connection, you're really working with like a raw SQLite database in order to set up your connections, because there's Canary Labs is still building the UI to do the MQTT support. So Canary Labs Historian. So what I did was I just built the UI in Factory Studio. I just built my own UI so that I could create broker connections for Canary by doing a direct connection to their SQLite database running in the background. I just built it in a runtime, made it real super easy. But one of the things that Mark talked about, you guys released the Canary Labs connector, which now gives us the ability to use Canary Labs Historian as a remote tag provider. But one of the things that you pointed out was when we wrote the connector, when we wrote the chirp connector for Canary Labs, which Canary Labs took over the development of that a year ago, we used Canary Labs web service to transmit the data. But you guys didn't do that. You guys went to the native.net because Canary Labs is .net.
Exactly.
You guys integrated with the native.net libraries. And can you explain just a little bit as to why that's such a big advantage?
Sure, I will. And I'm not sure if I'm still sharing my screen. No, I wasn't.
No, you're not. Go ahead and share it. No.
Let's share that. Okay. So essentially, to be clear, we can publish data on Canary using the MQTT database, okay? And in addition to that UI Walker created, we can open SQLite databases with this built-in tool. But the key points here that we did, okay, in our connector is to ability to use that .NET interface. When you're using other products, most of the time they use a hashful API, but Canary has a native .NET interface that we added inside our system. So that means when we create here in devices, channels, Canary Labs, the way I'm exchanging data with its server is through the .NET API. So if I put here a tag name in our data model, can be, of course, a data structure. But here I define an element inside Canary, we'll be able to publish data directly to that element and even create that element inside the Canary asset modeling if that object does not exist. So we are able to very easily add points to Canary from our platform, not even having to go with MQTT, natively accessing the Canary server and both reading and writing data and even creating the elements in the view or in their tag database if the element's not defined yet.
And so what this really means, and like I've been doing some benchmarks, since you told me this Monday, I didn't know that you used native.net because I had to leave during your presentation. So when we were at the roadshow, I didn't know that you use native.net. So I wanted to do some benchmarking. So I'm like, okay, well, there's a certain limit to the number of tags that you can stream to Canary over the RESTful API, right?
Yes.
And I mean, and it's a high number. I mean, we did 50,000 tags once per second, but that's only if the IoT platform and Canary are running on the exact same machine, right? So one of the things that we did was I did some benchmarking. I mean, and it's like a factor of almost 10 in terms of speed. So by using a native.net integration, as opposed to publishing data over the RESTful API, it increases by a factor of 10 in terms of total speed. And I expect that to increase in terms of volume as well. So that because the speed is at 10x, that means we should be able to send 10 times as many tags to Canary over that connection.
And frankly, we have a way to go even more 10 times because we have the ability here when you create one more channel or when you create many nodes.
Right, thread management,
to do threading, to do multi-threading. So you can do parallel requests if you need even more performance. So that difference that walk time 10 to 1 applies to communication drivers, apply to the script in some cases because you are doing compiling behind the scenes, and applies in some cases to the graphical interface because you know presentation foundation. So that's 10 time factors. It happens from time to time in a few areas of the platform.
So I mean, this is a big deal. Like what this is why I was saying, a month ago that like you guys took it just a massive, you guys took a massive step forward. It was already an impressive platform. Now it's really, really impressive. So, and you guys are definitely ready for the big time. The only when do you think real quick? When do you think the .12, which will contain the last elements in there? I know you don't want to commit to a time frame.
Yeah, we are planning to the second quarter of this year. What officially will start next week. Okay. So our plan now is on the second quarter of this year, and for sure, some users, include yourself, will have access for that on that quarter. If you make that available to everyone or not, frankly, you'll be dependent on the feedback we have from those early adopters.
So a couple, I know that we're 1 o'clock was our stop, right, Tolgar? But
there's actually no stop. So if the conversation's full, we can keep going. No
okay.
problem.
So what I would like to know is, we generally don't get into we try not to get into the technical details in these types of, we generally do it like one-on-one when we're talking to people. For our audience, for the people who are a member of the community who join this, is this more technical discussion something that provides real value for people, or is it, is it laborious? Is it boring? Does it go over people's head? I really want to know, because we generally stay away from the technical details, what's going on under the hood. I'd love to know from our community if this is valuable, these types of conversations. Number two, hopefully, the reason I agreed to come on here was, obviously I love you guys and everything, but the reason I came on is, we're very high on Factory Studio. I absolutely love the platform. I couldn't possibly love it more. And I wanted to come on here so we, Mark would have an opportunity to demonstrate one of the reasons that we were so high on the platform. So that, and so I want to make sure our community understands, when we talk about the value of Factory Studio, does that resonate? Does everyone understand why we're saying Factory Studio is different? Mario, my man. Yes. Awesome. Is it, does everyone understand, why, why we're so high on Factory Studio and what differentiates it from other platforms that are out there? Because this is a huge step, by the way. This is the remote tag provider piece, being able to do that without abstracting through tags is, it's a huge step, huge step. I can't overstate it. Really, it's impressive, man. You guys done a phenomenal job.
Well, thanks for your talks and your guidance the last 2 years.
Yeah. Hey, Tolgar, do we see, does every question that comes in or every comment pop up, or do you have to approve it when it comes through?
No, that for me to blast it on the screen there, I'm manually doing it, but it's in the chat. It's all live in the public chat on LinkedIn and YouTube. So.
Are there any questions that have been asked that we need to, we should answer?
Let me take a quick look just to make sure I didn't miss anything. No, just comments that when we were talking earlier, some MQTT, and then I believe, so I don't have anything in question form here.
Zach Wooten brought up a very good point, and you know, by the way, and this is a really difficult. This is not a conversation that IT professionals are going to understand. So, like, if you're the IT person, if you're the IT person in charge of digital transformation, and you don't have any operational, you don't have any OT experience, you will not understand why this is such a big deal, right? But Zach Wooten points it out. I know that I can tell that Zach does this type of work because he understands, and all our audience understands, that when you make a change on the edge using a traditional Industry 3.0 server client approach, right? The ISA 95 Part 1 segmented model, right, where you're passing data up a stack. Every time you add an object on the edge, you've got to add it at each integration point, right? So once I add the object in the PLC, then I've got to go to my first layer and I've got to add it there, whether that's going to be the native driver. Then I've got to go to the layer directly above that and add it there. And then I've got to go to my first visualization and add it there. And all of that is time and money. And so because it's time and money, there are objects you add into your ecosystem that you can't justify going through and adding and integrating it at each new layer, right? So now you're only going and integrating the real valuable stuff, the things you think are really valuable. But then you want to do machine learning. You want to do predictive analytics. You want to do single pane of glass, right? You want to do process optimization. You want to unlock potential on the plant floor, give your employees a toolkit to take data and turn it into efficiency, right? Create information and turn it into efficiency. And you can't, because you picked an architecture that makes you filter out 95% of all the data that will eventually you'll care about. The part of the reason we're so high on a technology stack is there's data you need to integrate into your ecosystem that today you don't know is valuable. And in the prevailing thought, you only integrate the stuff you've identified as valuable. The reason that we need this, or the reason we need technology that integrates everything, that makes it so that it doesn't cost me anything. If I add a new object in the broker, my IIoT platform has access to it like that. There's no engineer I got to pay to add it. There's no engineer I have to pay to build a new visualization. It just shows up. If you make the barrier to integrating all new data into your ecosystem easy, then it becomes the Godfather offer. Everybody, and I'm sure that Tolgar knows what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah,
the Godfather offer, the offer you can't refuse, right? If the data's there, you're going to use it. You can use it. If it's there, you're going to use it. You can't refuse it. If it's free to integrate it and it doesn't cost you anything, you're going to integrate it. It's going to become integrated as a function of the architecture. That's why we're so high on solutions like Factory Studio. And by the way, it looks like Hezron and Zach Wooten and Anthony Lincoln and the guys that are talking on here, they understand it because they're the ones who are tasked with going through each of those integration steps every time you add a new data point. And there's a lot of stuff you just leave out because you've got to actively go through and add it under prevailing architectures. And this is such a huge deal. And IT professionals who are watching this don't understand why it's valuable, and that's one of the problems. That's one of the challenges that we face when it comes to working with Industry 3.0 companies to help them digitally transform to become Industry 4.0 companies, right? Any other questions here that I just want to make sure?
Let me see. There's
integrated as a function of the architecture.
Yeah.
Exactly, Dan Reichen.
Yeah.
Okay.
So no new questions.
Exactly.
Hey, how many? Was this a good turnout, Tolgar?
Yeah, we had at peak we were about 28 live streaming on LinkedIn, which is actually really good. And then we had another, I think, 20 some on our YouTube channel. So yeah,
Awesome.
It was a really good turnout.
That's a good number live.
Yeah.
This will be available. We can share the link in the community for people to watch later.
To be available on LinkedIn, also in YouTube, and for whatever reason, they told me the quality in YouTube is better. I don't know if it's still the case, but
okay, awesome. Do you guys have any questions for me or?
Okay, I think we're
No,
good.
I think we're good. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Walker.
No, thank
Not
you, man.
only for this presentation, but for that very strategic advice the last 2 years to guide that roadmap. And let's keep moving. Thank you
Awesome.
very much for that.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Walker. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks,
Next
Togar.
week.
See you
Bye.
guys.